now that we have a new president coming in under Donald Trump, how do you envision at least 4 years working with the Department of Homeland Security and using IoT to increase security of the borders?
So I see IoT as a game changer, in not only the borders but also in our cities. We're starting to see a proliferation of inexpensive, low-power sensors, and we're starting to talk about sensors not in the hundreds of thousands, not in the millions, but the hundreds of millions. We're going to have the ability to better understand not just what's occurring around the border, but occurring in the neighborhoods of our cities. Part of the challenge that I see, though, Alan, is that you have so much data that we've got to figure out how to take that data and make it usable. Part of the conversation that we're having in Homeland Security is how do we create an architecture that is flexible enough to bring new sensors in, but then how do we overlay analytic engines over that? How do we start to bring in new intelligence apparatus? How do we start to bring in predictive analytics to be able to make that data usable? Because at the end of the day, the problem isn't so much a lack of data, it's how do you make usable data? One of the points I think that's really important for folks to remember is that big data is the key to little data, but little data is what becomes operationally useful, and that's what you really need on the street.
And obviously, security of the United States is, the core of your organization. In recent events, we've seen like the Mirai botnet attack and security within IoT. To what extent is the Department of Homeland Security emphasizing on security, especially on a national scale?
So there's a couple of different ways to look at this. There's the issue of creating secure backbones. So we start to think about our cybersecurity, our overall doctrine of cybersecurity within the department. We particularly look at what's occurring within the confines of the United States. So part of what the department's looking at is how do we make sure that both our governmental sites are safe, but also our critical infrastructure partners. Part of the challenge, and it's both a challenge and an opportunity at the same time of the Internet of Things, is that we have the ability to link systems in ways that we haven't in the past. By its very nature, though, it's creating vulnerabilities that we're going to have to make sure we deal with, because otherwise people are going to start to lose faith in key systems, whether it's election systems, as we saw as part of the debate, whether it's the financial systems, or certainly as you start to think about electric grid, water grid, some of the subsystems that people have just taken for granted over time now have a different level of vulnerability. With that said, there's also the sort of secondary tier down from the idea of the cybersecurity, and how do you weave all of this into your daily operations? So how do you take the security and the information from your Internet of Things devices and actually push it into the street levels? One of the things we're going to talk about a little bit later is this whole notion that actually national security starts at neighborhood security, which is sort of hard sometimes for people to get their arms around. But what the Internet of Things does is it allows you to amalgamate information from a basically block level or community level all the way up to a national level, which is very different than the idea of trying to push down from top or push down from a federal level. And I think that's part of the tension we see right now in the whole Internet of Things.
And we've heard a lot about how there's going to be billions and billions of IoT devices around the world, and particularly in the US. How do you ensure, because I'm sure as you're looking for potential threats to the US, how do you ensure a citizen's privacy and security in an age when we're going to have so many devices?
So I think the whole question of civil liberties and privacy is going to be a key and continuing conversation. I think a lot of the information that's going to become available is going to have to be made at a personal level. So if you're going to enjoy a lot of the benefits of having a wired home, that's going to come with a certain understanding that part of your information is going to become publicly available while others can't. At the same time, there's going to have to be, I think, very broad discussions, not just about government's use of data, but also private industry's use of data. And when you start to think about the amount of information that is in the hands of private industry that's yours or mine, it really actually in some respects is almost greater than what's in the hands of government. So privacy and civil liberties is not just something that's going to be limited to a government conversation, but it's going to have to be a broad conversation with the community. And a lot of it, I think, is going to be selective. If I want to be able to understand how my mom is doing, what the condition of her house is is it warm? Does she, is she eating? Is her health good? Then she and I are going to have an understanding about what type of information is made available to me and how much she's comfortable with.
Enjoyed this video? Click here to get the latest news on siliconrepublic.com and follow us on social media.